Howdy, Joseph.
Hi, hello, how are you?
We heard the news,
We're quite enthused.
and the only thing to do
What should we do?
is strum this guitar
And sing to the stars.
and serenade you.
You survived, and that's true. I thought I'd send a little wish to you.
That is some mighty fine fiddling. But hey, let's pick it up.
All right.
That's more like it. Yeehaw!
Play it for Joseph.
All right, now where were we? Okay, you're still standing, and that's pretty great.
Joseph.
You know what? You kicked his butt. It's time to celebrate.
Joseph.
Birds will jingle jangle.
It's time to do-si-do.
So grab yourself a partner and let's see you go.
Cause it's a
Jingle jangle here and a jingle jangle there. Jingle jangle inspiration everywhere. A jingle jangle here and a jingle jangle there.
a jingle jangle inspiration everywhere.
All right. That's how you celebrate.
Joseph Jaffe is not famous. I'm kind of famous. I'm Jerry Springer. And Jaffe is no host. He'd be lucky to be in my audience, let alone on my show. Well, maybe he's crazy enough to be on my show. I take that back. And that's not a good thing.
A spring in your step. There is a twinkle in your eye.
I can throw a rhyme down for you real quick. Yes, they call me Thrill. They say that I'm the man. You disagree? How could you? Let me make you understand.
Should we bring her on the show? Can anybody find me? And there she is.
Fresh as some bread. Pull right from the oven. When you feel rejected, get some my good loving.
Take on me.
She looks wonderful. Mom looks amazing.
Somebody to. Okay, more bugger off now. I've got to show it to you.
Like that?
Joseph Jaffe, ladies and gentlemen.
You just made the new intro of the show. It's 2322. How's it going, everybody? Why is my microphone so low? I'll just adjust it a little bit as nonchalantly as I can. In this case, I'm not sure. Maybe have I grown? Have you shrunk? Who knows? As long as you can hear me, I'll just kind of lean into the microphone and give you a little bit of my not radio voice. Maybe my guest today has a better radio voice than me. Certainly has a better face than me because, as we all know, yes, it's an old joke, and I will keep saying it, I have a face for radio, which is why I was determined to go on this journey to demonstrate to you not just that I'm not famous, but that I can make it on TV or video or streaming or, you know, whatever you want to call it. Remember what Shelley Palmer said to us this week? Where goes football, goes TV. And he said, I love this one. Television will die before the 30-second spot dies. Just so much amazing conversation. And I'm still thinking about it as I'm thinking about Dr. Fred Moss, who will be gifting us with these pearls of wisdom shortly. And then, of course, tomorrow is NFT Fridays. We're going to be hanging out with St. Louis Cardinals Evan Mendoza and the Diamond Dogs, and that's me on the right. Look how cool I am in my blue gear. And then a little sneak preview next week. Greg Sattel on Monday, Eugene Campbell on Tuesday. Decided to make him a king or a queen. Mitch Jackson, hopefully he's not watching. I don't know whether he prefers. Maybe he doesn't prefer any of those titles. Mitch Jackson on Wednesday, and then Carol Baskin on Thursday. You may recognize her from the television, TV running through us. And we are now fully booked through February and booking into March. Also, just a little bit of a heads up on next NFT Friday, we are going to be diving deep into Chibi Labs, Chibi Galaxy, with their founder, Matthew Sposter. I hope I pronounce his name correctly. And a little bit of a treat, a little bit of alpha for you, my friends. On Sunday, this Sunday at 2:30 p.m., I will be pre-recording an episode, an upcoming episode of NFT Fridays with a little gentleman. And I say a little gentleman because he's 14 years old and he was 13 years old when he put out his own NFT collection that sold out. His name is Nick Small, and he's going to be my guest. It's going to be pre-recorded. And the only way that you can actually access these pre-recorded shows is to be in the Discord server, is to have bought one of my Access NFTs, or to be a regular. There are a variety of ways that you can connect with me, that we can connect with each other, that we can be a part of this reinvention of the talk show. Good morning to you, LinkedIn user. And I see the name Anne Bowman. I wonder if that is Anne Bowman, who is back from the abyss, back from a hiatus. I certainly hope it is true. Welcome back if that's you, Anne. So all you have to do is subscribe to the show on YouTube. Why wouldn't you? I hope you would. And then there are other things to do, like join the Discord. I'm really leaning into Discord. I really do believe that Discord represents an unprecedented, unparalleled way for podcast hosts, for talk show hosts to build community with not just listeners or viewers, but really with community. So we'll be doing more and more things in Discord, and I welcome you to join me. In fact, today we've rebooted the after show. The after show now takes place in Discord. Whether my guest can join me or not, I'm going to be in Discord. So 15 to 30 minutes after the show, I will be hanging out with you guys, answering questions you might have. If my guest joins me, they'll be on stage as well. We'll go through the show. We'll talk about what we loved, what energized us, what motivated us, what infuriated us. Nothing infuriates us on the show, because the show is about hope, positivity, and optimism. And if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing. So that's what to expect moving forward. You have 1 hour with me Monday through Friday, 1 to 2 p.m. And then we move into Discord for an after show. And everything is podcasting today. I am a part of the Marketing Podcast Network. Maybe I need to join Dr. Fred's podcasting network. We'll have to find out all about that. But this is a joyous time to be in the podcasting business, in the podcasting world. Even if you're, or maybe except if you're Joe Rogan, I'm not really sure. But we'll see if Dr. Fred wants to wade into that marshland or minefield. But now it is time for the seated soliloquy. And today I called my seated soliloquy, hello, Tom Morris, Jaffe fan in the house. You'll be hearing from Tom Morris shortly with his philosophy vignette, Pearl of Wisdom, all on failure. So we will bring him in later. But now we're going to talk about authentic voice. Now, I get very excited when the topic of authenticity comes up, but specifically when we think about it from a creator standpoint, we're talking about there is this idea of authentic voice. What is authentic voice? Well, authentic voice actually isn't your voice. I mean, it is your voice, but in every medium or every platform, it can be a little bit different. The same voice, but expressed differently. So it's not a schizophrenic type of existence, but we do recognize that we have different personas, different avatars, different lives. We can be a businessman or woman or business person during the day, but at night we sing at School of Rock. We can be a successful captain of enterprise, a high-powered executive, but then want to fade into the background, not stand out. Maybe it's volunteering for our child's soccer or basketball team as well. So there's a different voice there. You might be barking orders to your subordinates during the day, but on the sidelines, you're not barking at anyone. In fact, maybe you're barking at the parent who's barking to their child. So in the case of expressing oneself, whether it's podcasting, whether it's Twitter, whether it's a streaming talk show, the authentic voice, it changes. And you know it. You will know it the second it hits you when you've found your niche. When you know when to talk and when not to, when to listen. When you're happy to be in the audience and when you're happy to be on the stage. You should never have to doubt yourself when you are expressing yourself, when you are true to yourself using your authentic voice. And I was in looking for a quote for Dr. Fred. I came across a lot of similarities between the idea of authentic self and authentic voice. Can you express your authentic voice if you're not being true to yourself? If you're not also and equally dialing into feeding, energizing your authentic self? So experiment. I challenge you to experiment and notice how your voice will adapt, how it will change. Still you, but just expressed a little bit differently across different platforms. And the final thing I'll say, as many of you know, that I'm spending increasing amounts of time in the rabbit hole of Web3. I also recognize who I am and what I bring to the table. There is an element of experience, but I'm also a white male. I also recognize that I know a lot about a lot, but I also don't know jack about a lot too. So there has to be a certain element of humility as well when it comes to expressing that authentic voice. So those are my thoughts, and I'm sticking to them. It's now time to also recognize Joey Dumont. I guess we are getting the band back together again. Joey is here. Joey was one of our regulars in the Zoom after show, and I hope we will be able to lure him and Mr. Tom Morris and maybe even Dr. Fred into our after show afterwards. I'm just thrilled to see you. Welcome back. Welcome home, I should say. Well, now it's time to introduce our very special guest, Dr. Fred, and a little bit of background on him. I'm actually going to read his bio, which I love. I'm going to read it as if I was him. Meet your host, Dr. Fred. As a board-certified psychiatrist turned podcast host and course creator, I've helped over 40,000 people heal themselves by finding their true voice. So my team and I took my decades as a physician and developed a technology that we now use to help hundreds of podcasters share your voice, grow your audience, and build your brand through the True Voice Podcasting Mastermind. As a podcast host, I've done over 100 podcasts with some of the biggest thought leaders, celebrities, and entrepreneurs in the world, including Mark Victor Hansen, Chicken Soup for the Soul book series, Shaheen Cheyenne, the book Billions, and a guest on my show, Dr. Bill Dorfman, Extreme Makeover, and more. And guess who my next guest is? This is very meta. My next guest, of course, is you, Dr. Fred. You're a guest on your own show.
That's fabulous. Thank you for having me, Joe. It's really, really fabulous to be here. And wow, you've really captured so much when you've taken on this idea of what true voice is and what authentic voice is. And I really appreciate the homework you've done, but it isn't really homework, is it? It's sort of your life's work. We start looking at how do you bring forth authenticity? What is authenticity? What is that true voice? And you you hit the nail on the head when you talk about the resonance that happens. Like, you know, when you get there, you know, that's a sort of a weak definition of when you're describing a destination typically. But in the case of authenticity, you do get a resonance. You do get sort of a feeling, a knowledge, acknowledgement that you've arrived at what you truly are and what you truly stand for. And when you're speaking it, it rings truer than any other thing you might be saying that might be more inauthentic. So I really appreciate the introduction that you put here. Really well thought out, thoughtful, and well articulated. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. And you know, the funny thing as well is that I had switched to writing my soliloquy, and it was 400 words, and I actually loved the discipline of being able to make sure that that soliloquy was roughly about 3 minutes. That was 400 words. I could choose each word perfectly. And then one day, just force of circumstance, what do they say? A necessity is the mother of invention. For some reason, there was some technical issues and I wasn't able to write it in time. And I realized I was ready to go back to my authentic self, which is not a scripted self. And now it's just me riffing and actually not preparing at all. So not only am I just riffing, but I have no notes, as in I want to hit this, this, and this. And the only thing that I use to keep myself honest is a 3-minute egg timer to make sure that I actually do fit in. So it gives me joy. And you know, you spoke about life's work. It's not work when you're being true to yourself. Whether it's life's work, whether it's hard work, it doesn't feel like work when you are really in love with what you do. And therefore, by definition, in love with yourself. And I don't mean that in a narcissistic way.
No, it's a beautiful point. You know, we start looking at the definition of work, and you know, typically we look at work as being something we wouldn't do if we had free time in our hands. It's something that we only do because it's not aligned with who we are. It's something that we only do in order to make money, or in order to find something to do during the day, or in order to meet a deadline. But in the world of life's work, one could say that if you just adjust the definition of work a little bit, that our work is to find our true voice again, is to rediscover, and then redeliver what it is we're really about. You know, we were born with a true voice. We didn't have any idea about inauthenticity when we popped out. Inauthenticity was something that came upon us over time, a way of managing, a way of surviving, a way of, you know, being able to be certain that we belonged, or attempting to belong, and nevertheless. And we go through young adulthood, we go through adulthood, maybe parenting, maybe a career, maybe whatever we go through, and we learn how to say and be something that we're really not. And so the whole idea of authenticity is a return to where we were, so that we're not muddled with the features of life that actually block us from being authentic.
You are being very philosophical. You're making Tom Morris jealous, but not to be outdone. He says, Hindu proverb, when you can't tell whether it's work or play, you're doing it right. So I have a feeling the two of you would enjoy each other's company.
Yeah, and you know, we aren't the first two to think of life that way, but it's been my goal over the last 10 or 15, maybe even longer years, maybe even before medical school, that I could reach the point where I could be this me of me, you know, where I could be me, no matter where I was, no matter when I was there, no matter what I was assigning myself to do, whether I was so-called working or playing or being with my family or friends, or being alone or reading or writing or walking, that I would not have to venture very far from where I was in order to live life, because it does seem like a waste of time, a significant waste of time, to have to spend time dealing with someone that I'm not, and pretending to be, you know, that person rather than who I really am.
The me of me almost sounds susical or musical. But you know, the other thing I was thinking of when you were talking was this idea that people always romanticize about winning the Powerball lottery, and there's this idea of what would you do if you won the Powerball lottery, if you won Mega Millions? And so many people say, or what would you change? And people would say I would change nothing. I would just continue to do what I'm doing. I mean,
Mhm.
why would I stop this talk show?
Mhm.
When this talk show is my purpose, I
Mhm.
might get a producer to help me a little bit or someone to help me book guests. But why do I need a booker when I can book guests like Shaheen, Cheyenne, and you, Dr. Fred?
Mhm. Yeah, well, it's fun to be associated with Shaheen in the same paragraph. He's quite a character indeed, and he is a friend of mine and someone who has been on my show as well. And you're right. It's what would I do? I have ventured into that question before, and from a world of scarcity, I can come up with what I would do. I'd maybe buy myself a jet, or take care of people that I love, or send money to a particular charity, or something like that. I might do with a lot of money. Um, but if I actually really, really won the Powerball, or if I really won millions, it is a bit romantic to say I wouldn't do anything. I just pack the money in the bank and continue to eat at the same places and go to the same places and live in the same places. But I'd probably find something to do with a couple extra 100 million that was not in my pocket the day before. I'm not sure what that would be. I'd have to pay a lot of taxes. I know that there's that, but beyond that, it would be maybe I'd hook you up with some, because I think your Not Famous show might be making me famous right in front of our very eyes, and so I'd probably owe you in retrospect, and so you'd probably get a chunk of it, Joseph.
You know what? I like that. So now I'm gonna start sending all the karma in your direction to
Good
win
plan.
that Powerball lotto, and it's very appropriate because this is the segment of the show we call Fun Facts, and those balls kind of look like they could be Powerball
Hmm.
balls. So this is what we found out about you in terms of
Oh
your
no.
background.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, this is definitely is definitely the right reaction. Finally,
Oh no.
finally somebody admits. Well, the first thing we found out about you is that you are not to be outdone, you outdid yourself. You are a two-time college dropout.
Hmm.
And in all seriousness, it's so funny. I've had so many incredibly successful people on the show who dropped out of college, or who were, I had, I had someone who, I mean, this was unbelievable. He was failed out of college. He didn't drop out of college. He was asked to leave college. Can you imagine the humiliation, of being able to deal with that? And
Hmm.
yet it has made him who he is. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit about dropping out. Well, first of all, why did you go back after you dropped out? Just to make sure it was the right decision, and then you're like, yeah, it was. I'll drop out again.
Exactly. See, I was always interested, even when I was in elementary school. I was interested in the big kids. I was interested in learning how to communicate. I've always been a communicator. No teacher ever had me as a student who then forgot having me as a student. So when I was in elementary school, I thought that the big kids in junior high would probably be where I'd communicate. And then that didn't happen. I got to junior high and they were actually more immature than the elementary school kids. So I thought, oh yeah, it's because they call it junior high. So then I went to high school hoping that that's where I would learn how to communicate. And frankly, that isn't what I did in high school. I don't really go into that right now, but high school was a whole different game that wasn't about communication. But I was preparing to go to the University of Michigan, where I really knew that the smart people would go, and I love their helmets. And, I really thought that they were a great school to go to, given that I was living in the Detroit suburbs. And when I got there, it was just like a complete disappointment again. I mean, it was just like the immaturity that I had found when I'd come through elementary school and junior high. And I was like, this is not going to work for me to sit in this chair and just deal with this crap. So I need to go. And after a year and a half, I left. And I, started traveling around the country, this whole idea of finding who I was. And that didn't work out so good either. It was kind of dark and cold out here. And I was like, well, I probably should just find a way back to school and figure out something that works for me. So I went back and, it's threw a dart, at the dartboard, and decided I'd go into computer science. And I didn't last even a whole year. I was like, wow, this sucks worse than what I had done before. So I need to go and then never come back. And I came home and really told my mom that I'm out of here. I'm not doing school ever. And, moms will be moms. And she's like, well, that's Fred. That's fine. You got to get a job now. I'm like, what? You know, and I got a job as a child care worker in a state mental health facility.
Wow.
And that's where I was back to being, you know, communicating. And so it really was double checking whether or not that first dropout was appropriate. And by the second dropout, I was dead serious. I'm not going back to school.
Now, if you had done it a third time,
Yeah.
that would have been impressive. But we all know why you actually did, in fact, drop out. It's because there is no question that you are working for the Mossad because you have an Israeli passport, and you felt the need to share that. So I can only imagine that that there is some covert activity going on. I mean, it's why I have this in my ear right now. I'm being told to end this interview immediately, or so what's going on with this Israeli passport? What contraband are you busy moving?
Yeah, so that's really great. I had always had this idea that if America didn't work out, we could go back home. You know, that somehow I was being called back home. And so in 2014 was the first time that I visited Israel. I loved it. I had a great time. You know, I was on a typical tour, and then I went back in 2015. Went back again with a different friend. And in 2017, frankly, after the 2016 election, I was like, okay, same kind of thing. It's funny that you bring it up, or that I give it to you to bring up. It's like, okay,
Exactly.
this America thing isn't going to work out for me. Same thing as school. It's like, you know what? This US thing, it's not going to work out for me. I need to get out of here. So I went to Israel with the full intention of making Aliyah. And on Independence Day in May of Israel, you know, the Israeli Independence Day in May of 2017, with my 92-year-old mother actually sitting next to me in Jerusalem, having visited me for that particular month, they indeed gave me a passport, and they stamped it, and I now have a blue passport, and I'm a dual citizen, both of Israel and the United States. My mom has since passed away, which I was here for her passing. I actually had an airplane ticket to go back to Israel, but instead I've stayed in America after she passed and getting my ducks in a row. So I'm glad to be in the United States for now.
Well, we are glad that you haven't actually dropped out of America. We know about the dropping out of college, but we're glad you haven't dropped out of America.
Not yet.
Not yet. And if you do, at least we know you've got at least one more left. So
that's right.
So that becomes your new dropped out of America twice.
That's right.
But let's get in now into your story professionally, because I have such a soft spot for podcasting myself, only because I was one of the first marketing podcasters in the world back in 2004, 2005. I certainly regret not continuing. I had so much juice in those days. I mean, my online persona is Jaffe Juice after all. But I remember feeling so disillusioned when the NPRs and the ESPNs and the Mark Marons and all the celebs, all of the, talk about the Matthews effect, the rich get richer. I felt like with all the work I'd done, I'd been crowded out, and I kind of just almost gave up, waved the white flag. Today, things are so different, and podcasting and audio and social audio play such an amazing role. So I would love for you to tell us how you got into it, how you've, your vision, and of course, how you're helping others discover not only share in that vision, but discover their true voice.
That's a great question. Thank you for that. What for me has happened is I did obviously go back to school. I didn't like the way that psychiatry was treating the kids that I began to work with. And I went back to school because I really was already committed to the idea that communication, connection, creativity, really being connected to another human is the source of all healing. And I thought as a psychiatrist that I could bring that forth. But psychiatry, just like high school and just like college and just like medical school and just like all these things, was somewhat disappointing with respect to learning how to communicate. Psychiatry went through a paradigm shift while I was in medical school and started seeing psychiatric conditions as being chemical imbalances, and psychiatry took on a biological flair rather than a communicative flair. So over the next several years, I became a biological expert. I became a pharmacological expert, a diagnostician. I saw 40,000 patients over the next 30 or so years. And it was difficult for me because it wasn't based in communication. It was more based in, if after communication works, we send our patients to the doctor so that they can bang them around with some drugs. That really, really, really didn't work for me, but I did it anyways for a while. So when I was introduced to podcasting, the idea was that I could again fall back on, or really again re-arrive in the notion that authentic voice and sharing with others and connecting with others really is at the source of all healing. And once I began to really compare podcasting with some of the other social media platforms that many people use, I began to see that podcasting has a terrific advantage over any of the other platforms out there. It's like the Wild West. You own your own material. You can aim it at with proper distribution. You're not controlled by algorithms or hate culture or cancel culture. And the possibility is of really having open and honest, authentic communication with people online. And you get to meet famous and of course, not famous people when you're online. And that's super exciting. And, just ask anybody. I asked Victor Hansen, do you want to come on my show? He's like, yes. I'm like, really? I was like, okay, you're on my show. And before too long, I'm having conversations with people that are so fascinating, and I learn from them, and then my listeners learn from them. So I have nothing bad to say about podcasting. I think you're right. We're in a space where I don't think there'll ever be a medium that's as wide open as podcasting is, to not only deliver true voice, but to hear and listen to people bringing their true voice and to have open communication that really does move the world. So I now have True Voice Podcasting as the course that I lead. We have 28 people graduating from our next cohort. Thank you for showing that. And there on February 19th and 20th, we have a summit that is on the screen here. And the summit is just turning out to be beautiful. The right people and the right materials falling out of the sky. We're going to be highlighting our graduates. We're going to have some keynote speakers. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. We're going to show people how to make podcasts, how to make money on podcasts, and create a community so that, like you said, hopefully you'll be in the community where podcasters, wannabe podcasters, and podcaster affiliates and assistants will be there. And we're really looking to create another podcasting community that moves the needle forward. So truevoicepodcasting.com is how our listeners can sign up for that. I invite everyone. It's a free summit. And I'm really looking forward to the summit. It's a lot of work putting together a summit, but I think I have some of your friends that are helping me. Maybe like Ken D. Foster is helping me, and Jim Padilla is helping me, and a number of metal men are helping me. And it's like I'm surrounded by great people, so likely to have a great event in a couple of weeks.
Well, I always say that if you really are hard up for speakers, I can recommend a few people for you. No, if as I said, if you're desperate for a little bit of help, someone pulls out at the last moment, you know my number because I just texted you before. But that's fantastic. And what I love about it is that you're creating community within. So as opposed to the relationship that a host has with his or her audience, you're also creating community between different podcasters. So it's a network of like-minded people that can learn from each other, whether it's a one-off event. I mean, I remember going back to the good old days, the early days, PodCamp and all the unconferences, and you really felt like you weren't alone. And that was the most important thing. And sometimes I guess there's something beautiful about the solitude of being a podcaster, where you could be just talking to the wall I have the advantage of seeing you. I love video, but when you take that away, when you block it, you have to really, really lean in to and concentrate on the voice. And when it's only you, then there is it's a different kind of intimacy, but it's also kind of a solitude. So sometimes it's great to be around other people.
Well, you describe it perfectly. And I think the thing that's here is, even when described perfectly, you don't really get a handle on it until you experience it. Like when you start talking into a camera and realizing, with Foster's, I was a guest on his show. And at one point he said to me, it was like 3 minutes before the show, he said, okay, you realize this is about to be streamed into 170 countries. I'm like, no, I didn't realize that. How's my hair? How we doing? And he's like,
It looks
oh yeah,
great.
yeah, thanks. I work on it, and especially on the highlights. And so yeah, and it was like, it doesn't change anything. It's almost like, I pick my avatar. Who am I really speaking to? Am I speaking to you? Am I speaking to this particular fictional or real audience member that's out there? And then you can start speaking. And if you really get that there's an engagement, or that it's coming from authenticity, that it's coming from this like proud space of being consistent with who I know I am, the likelihood that it's landing in some favorable fashion is very high, at least with some people. And for those people who don't like what I'm saying or don't like how I'm presenting, well, that's okay too. I mean, you're not going to be able to please anyone, but I mean, please everyone. But there's an opportunity to just be a stand for bringing whatever is important to you forward, whether or not I agree with it, whether or not I'm willing to, endorse you or what you're saying. What I will do is endorse you for being honest to yourself and being authentic with yourself, being true to yourself. It's a short life, and the biggest shame would be to live this whole life and never having expressed what really mattered to you. And instead, being something that you're really not in order to get through the world. To me, it feels like that would be the biggest shame of a life poorly spent. And you have the opportunity with podcasting to actually express yourself. It's not that hard to become a podcaster, and it's actually not that hard to become a successful podcaster, meaning one that makes money or lands their message on a audience willing to, and ready to hear them. And it's really is a super cool life I've developed for myself, that I now again to get to source people and finding their true voice.
It's a beautiful story, and it's a beautiful idea that it's so similar to my journey, which is amazing. One of the things that I've wanted to do on my to-do list is a keynote, possibly a book, maybe a training program. And I know the line, I know the title. It's how I reinvented myself during a global pandemic, and you can too. And the essence of it is to say, let me show you, let me help you, let me, I will tell you everything. I won't hold anything back. I'll tell you how I source my guests. I'll show you my equipment. I just, because it's like this joy in being able to say, if I can play a role in other people having the same joy that I have right now. I'm not hoarding it. It's not a finite quantity, but that makes the whole world better, as opposed to me trying to monopolize thought leadership. And I used to be like that. I used to want to be the smartest person in the room. Now I know I'm the smartest person in the room, but I don't have to tell people. No, I'm just kidding.
No, you're not kidding. At least in this room, there's no question that you're the smartest.
Well, there's no one else in this room right now. So I am, by definition, the smartest person in the room. So, Dr. Fred, rather than you talk about true voices and me talk about true voices, let's hear from some of the people that are actually part of it.
There is nothing greater in the world than speaking your true voice.
A true voice has to be loud.
This program really healed my heart.
Giving my voice an outlet.
And I'm now a podcaster, okay?
I'm just grateful, just really experiencing gratitude.
And a great experience.
I'm so grateful to have found my voice.
Who I am is ending racism, and that is my true voice. And I really got it.
I did it. I broke through something.
And that's the power of speaking your true voice.
Just a little segue.
That's some dope shit, dude. That's really, really nice. I am so proud of that. The thing that's best about that, it was captured by all the videos that got recorded. And this was actually the last day of that course, officially, although we have continued on informally, is that really does represent what happened in the course. And, this wasn't scripted. You could tell it was really coming from the heart. These are people who are so grateful to have finally found something that they can deliver into the world and now feel free to do so. Like you and I were just speaking of, like speaking into a camera or speaking into a microphone and landing that true voice out there, there's not that much more. There's not many things that are more rewarding than that. So it really is a cool slice there. Thanks for showing that.
And you're welcome. And there's also some very interesting little breadcrumbs there. This idea of, my true voice is ending racism. It's inextricably tied in to purpose, to, raison d'etre, to why I get up in the morning, why I get out of bed in the morning. And so true voice in a way is just your portal, right? It's just the expression of that purpose. Also, someone else in that video said, a true voice has to be loud. And I thought that that's interesting because generally we don't associate positive. It's not a positive thing to be loud, but being loud and proud, that's different. So what does it mean to be loud?
So yeah, I noticed that as well in the trailer, and I think in this way, we're not talking about loud like we're headphones. We're talking about loud like resounding. We're talking about loud like if you like Hemingway is loud. We're talking about loud when it hits home, like kaboom, like bam, like that's the loudness we're talking about. And the truth is, when you're true, it, like you had already spoken to, you get that resonance, you get that loudness, you understand that the sound is pure. And that's, I think that's the power of the loudness that particular participant was speaking towards.
I really love it. It's almost like it's, sometimes the idea of seeing sounds or,
exactly.
Yeah, it is. It's seeing,
kinesthetics, I think is what it's
what's
called.
the other one? So it's seeing sounds and like hearing colors. But in this case, it's a qualitative association with loud. It's not actually a physical loudness. It's a resonance. So I love that little insight. Well, this is a good time to bring Tom Morris into the picture because. And I never know what he's going to say, and he probably doesn't know what he's going to say either. But he hasn't let me down yet. And this is his vignette on failure. And then I'll ask you about failure afterwards, and we'll obviously discuss what he had to say. So, Tom, take it away.
Hi, I'm Tom Morris. I've been thinking about failure a lot recently. We hear all this advice: fail fast, fail often. But tell that to a skydiver, and she's likely to correct your admonition. What's this all about anyway? Well, life is mostly experimentation, as Emerson taught us, and life is full of surprises. So we should be prepared to try things at which we might fail. That's the core of this commonly given advice. We shouldn't fear failure on a modest scale, the kind that you can survive and learn from, grow from, correct. In my own thinking about failure recently, I've come to realize that the worst failures are our moral failures or our spiritual failures, where we depart from what Aristotle called the virtues, things like courage and honesty, duty, the promises we make, the commitments we enter into. When we fail on those things, those are our worst fails of all. And sometimes it's failures of things like honesty and courage that lead to our other failures, which is why Aristotle thought courage was the most important virtue of all the strengths we possess, because without that, we won't stick with any of the others when times get tough. So Aristotle would advise us, I think, in our day, failure is something not to be feared. It's something to learn from and grow from. It's certainly not something to be pursued in itself. It doesn't have to be. It's going to come anyway into our lives. But the Greeks had a principle I call functionality. Very few things in life are intrinsically good or intrinsically bad. It's all in how they function for us in our lives. If failure on a modest scale can function well in our lives, we benefit from it tremendously. We're not going to avoid failures, so we might as well handle them well with all the virtues that Aristotle talks about. To fail to do that is to fail indeed. See you later.
Tom Morris. Is he still batting 100?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's good stuff. Thanks for sharing that.
I was thinking as he was talking about this idea of failing yourself, or maybe failing your true voice, or failing to deliver your true voice. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that idea of trying to get to your true voice, but failing to deliver or under delivering against what you aspire to be true.
Beautiful question. So, we have developed an understanding of the word failure probably from that conventional education that we've taken on when we started about 5 years old. We got the red marks on our handwriting assignment or on our reading, like comprehension tests or quick mathematic flashcards, and we fail and it's something bad. And, these days, I do my best anyways to incorporate. I sometimes get stung just like anyone else, where I don't do something, or I say I'm going to do something and I don't do it, or, fail in my level of honesty that I hold myself to, or in my level even of courage that I hold myself to. And what's really beautiful about the life that we get to live as adults, at least pursuing, if not gaining a little bit of wisdom, is there's no such thing of failure until you finally quit. Like you can take failure and reincorporate it and reset yourself. You can restore yourself and really get that it's pretty human to set an expectation and not actually meet it. So each and every morning I do some training with this amazing trainer from Denver. We meet together and I do some wicked training, with push-ups and like bird dogs, and with a medicine ball, or with jumping jacks, or different physical activity, squats, or curtsies. And these things can get pretty difficult after a few different reps. And he's like, okay, time to do 25 push-ups. And I get to 20 or 21 and I'm pushing hard, and I realize it's like, there's something in the mindset that allows me either to continue past the point where failure would have been what I would have done if I was alone, or to actually stop, to actually get that I don't have 4 more reps in me right now, and to honor and be graceful with the fact that even though I had committed to doing 25 reps, I'm going to do 21. And I'm going to give myself the grace and the beauty of getting that I'll get those next 5 when I do. Like the opportunity to roll failure in, to feel the pain, if you will, of an old story that has us feeling bad or worse than when we don't meet expectations, and to roll that in. Now, what I'm submitting here, I think, is we can do that with our failure of our word, and a failure of our honesty, our failure of our true voice, our failure of our courage. We can do that with that as well. Even if we act cowardly in a particular situation, and then we look back at it and we're not proud of it, we want to change it, the possibility exists to roll it in, give yourself the grace, learn from it, step up again, reactivate, reinitiate, and let's get back on the life wheel again, because ultimately, we are going to fail. Someone who doesn't fail isn't trying. And, it's the same thing with true voice. I'm not bringing my true voice right now. I'm just bringing a closer version of my true voice than what I was bringing when I was being more inauthentic. And the truth is, I can get some refinement each and every day to speak what's true for me. Words and sentences don't properly capture all of reality. So I got to pick and choose what I say and how I say it. And I need to protect myself and make sure not to offend people sometimes, and those kinds of things. So I'm not entirely true right now. It's not like I'm entirely authentic. And one of the best things about resetting is I get to refine and define, and then maybe take a better shot, or maybe take a better, look at what does true voice, or what does authenticity, or what does courage, what does honesty really look like?
I heard 2 things, and I want to make sure that the second one is true or is accurate. The first is this idea that it's a moving target, right? One never arrives. One never gets to the point where we can say, today I hit my true voice at 101.1 or 97.3%. It is a work in progress, and I love this idea that if you're moving towards authenticity, by definition, you're moving away from inauthenticity. Like, I don't know where I'm going, but I know where I've come from. I know what I don't want, and I'm trying to figure out what I do want. The other thing, when you said I'm not exactly my authentic self right now, and I thought to myself, well, this is how I interpreted it, which is, I'm on your show, we've just met. This is not me. If you got to know me, if you spent the next 10 years working with me, if you were a family member of mine, if you were a business partner of mine, you'd see someone different. It's close. I'm not, I'm not putting on a show. I'm putting on a bit of a show. I mean, when we perform, we give keynotes. It's a show. Is that what you were saying? Because I thought that was an amazing point.
Well, I am saying that, and I'm saying another piece, which I think is also really important, just to piggyback on what you're saying here, which is, even in my authenticity, tomorrow I might change my mind entirely and be totally authentic and take a different side than what I took today, and neither of them would be lies. Neither of them would be inauthentic. Like, authenticity is a function of right now. Authenticity is a function of where I'm feeling right now. And if I'm feeling aimless or empty or fearful or anxious or depressed or afraid, or any of the sort of negative vibration experiences that some mental health professionals actually have us think are representative of being defective, which I don't think it is. That's where Welcome to Humanity comes. But if I'm feeling those things, as if I can express those things, if I can actually be those things through my presentation with voice, or through my presentation perhaps even with art, or music or dancing or singing or drama, those kinds of things, then that is another form of authenticity. Even if what I'm feeling is, like, I could say I'm feeling inauthentic. And if I say that, that's an authentic statement about feeling inauthentic. And I'm back on the train of being authentic, as long as I'm expressing what's going on for me right this moment as best as I can. And that tends to resonate with people. When I speak my true voice for what my experience is right now, people are like very inspired by that. And I know that I'm inspired when others do that too. And I think authenticity itself is a moving target and doesn't require me to be anything like I am today 10 years from now.
You get the doctor is in the house. It's a little bit of a mic drop moment. I want to spend the last couple of moments and talking about something that really hit home with me. You talk about this concept of welcome to humanity. You talk about podcasting as the last remaining vestige to deliver authentic messages. But then there was something else, and you said you are really helping source true voice to the community now, as it is urgent time. So why now? Why more than ever?
Yeah. Well, I don't think you have to be well-educated or a rocket scientist. You don't have to have lived in a certain space or traveled the world or had plenty of conversations with people, or many, thousands of conversations of meeting people, to know that these are times when our voice is being constricted, it's being restricted, it's being contracted. And we're not as open. It's not as open of a lane to speak that which really matters to us and to the world. The trolling that's going on social media, or the cancel culture that's going on social media, the censorship that's going on and now that we're so electronic, we don't hit the world, speaking openly in coffee shops or in courtyards or at concert halls. We're no longer doing that at the same pace. So it's become more and more difficult to speak what we think. And then it's really, of course, also become more difficult to know what's going on. Like, what is the real truth out there? Who believes what about what? And we've probably had experience of saying things and then turning off turning off a friend or turning off a family member, and now, breaking a relationship over one or two things that we say. So saying the wrong thing has become a real deal, like something to be concerned about, that you can lose a longtime friend or even a family member as a colleague or an advocate. And an advocate can turn into an adversary with just one sentence. Like, I could say something right now. It's not like I know what it is, but I could say one sentence right now, and your guest would say, I really like Dr. Fred until he said that. Now he's just a jerk. It's like one sentence can label you as being, ostracizable, like discardable, like dismissible. And what podcasting is podcasting is an opportunity to stay authentic, to interview great people, to have conversations with wonderful people, to aim it at an audience, and to own the content so that it's not subject to the censorship or to the cancelability or to the trolling that is going on in our primary form of communication, which at this point is rather unfortunately social media. And instead, what we have is an opportunity to really, people aren't going to listen to a podcast that they don't care about. And there's an opportunity, like the people who are here, your super fans, Joseph, are people who are, really love who you bring on, love who you are, love what you stand for, and they can't wait for your next episode. And that's not the same as what's going on elsewhere. So our life is short. We're not sure what's going to happen tomorrow. We're not sure if we're going to be here in this 10-year time frame with the same. It's very likely it's going to look quite a bit different than it does look now. And as I said before, a life without ever coming in touch and delivering your true voice would be a life of tragedy, as far as I'm concerned. And I think that Emerson and Aristotle would both agree with that.
I also do feel, there was very eloquently articulated. It's interesting when one thinks about the I don't want to say, well, I will say the controversy associated with Joe Rogan and what's happening with Spotify. But the one thing I'll reflect on in context of this conversation is and this is purely from the podcaster's standpoint, there is a certain safety about being able to communicate in an environment that is closed. This is not closed right now, in the sense, for me, I feel very, very strongly about the power of live. So that I can, I can immediately put Tom Morris on, who said, I've never met a true saint or sage who wasn't always changing and seeking to get better. They see their own flaws. Nobody else can see it and use them to grow even more. I assume that's them as well. But for me, I want to be connected, but I feel like like podcasting, there is a safety net of being able to say, I'm going to express myself. I hope you agree with me, but I can handle it if you don't. And you can't really talk back right now. And it just makes me think of Seth Godin, right? Seth Godin, he always said that his blog has no comments, because he doesn't want people to affect or influence him and what he has to say, which is not to say that he doesn't care about them. He probably does very much. He's just saying that this is my safe place, and I can't be authentic to you if you're gonna be passing me notes all the time.
Yeah. So there's a couple things that you're saying here. If you speak, it's like I'm in Seth Godin's course as we speak. I don't know if you know that, but I'm in Alt MBA now. I'm going into my third week of the Alt MBA program, which says the 50th version of that particular course. It's flat out amazing. As we take on prompts, and basically we take on difficult prompts individually and in a small group, and then throw down on print what it is how we're, whatever the assignment is for that particular one. And then we take feedback from 5 other classmates and incorporate that. And then we give a reflection after getting the feedback. And then the game is over. Then there's no room. There's not a place there to comment on my reflections. So, the idea is that we get to own who we are. We say what we are, we ship what we get, and we take the feedback, and then we reflect. And there's an opportunity to get that's a really great way to go through life. There's something beautiful about being able to deliver that authentic message. the other thing is that Psychology Today is another. I write for Psychology Today. I'm on their blog. I feel very honored to be have given a VIP slot in their blog. Same way, by the way, they don't have comments for their blogs either. And there's, I'm not sure it's the same reason that Seth has, but it's this idea of being able to just say what I mean. And if you don't like it or you do like it, we're not going to get into a battle, a wit battle about it. And then thirdly, I think, you've talked about the Rogan experience enough that we should probably at least chime in on that. It's not like I've been digging into every piece of it, but from what I understand, Rogan's on a big contract with Spotify. He says what he says. He means what he means. He's as honest as he is honest. And, he directs in some way or misdirects or indirects or whatever he does by being someone with that level of gravity, that level of exposure. And what other people do with it, what Neil Young does with it, or what Joni Mitchell does with it, or what anyone does with it is like completely up to them. And, for me, I like to sit back far enough to be amused by everybody's humanity. And at the same time, keep myself sane and really see that in some ways, maybe Joseph, you can correct me if I'm a day or two behind on this piece of news, but I have it that Joe Rogan, Joni Mitchell, and Neil Young, who I get are the, at least the most recent high level players involved in the Joe Rogan experience concerns, are all expressing their true voice in their various way. And it's like kudos to all three of them, and to Spotify, by the way, and to Spotify as an entity to have done essentially nothing, about, really stepping forth one way or another. So for me, it's like still a thumbs up that group is still dancing with the idea that authentic voice trumps all.
Joni Mitchell, Neil Young, and Joe Rogan walk into a bar. Look for that podcast wherever podcasts are downloaded. We end off with a quote, and that is not the quote. Why did I even put in that quote? This is where we do a little bit of shuffling. And you know what I'm going to do just in the few minutes we have left. I'm going to do this just because I've been waiting for a good opportunity to indicate this. This is the quote: "Hard times arouse an instinctive desire for authenticity." And that was Coco Chanel. So that's what I wanted to leave us with, a little bit of fun and games at the end. We're now heading into Discord. I don't even know if you can join me. Can you join me?
I can. I canceled my other thing. I'm ready to be here with you. I'm really excited.
Wonderful. So we're going to head into Discord. I just put that URL below for you. And there's nothing else to say except Chuck Norris. Take it away.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
There we go. Let's go into Discord, from the sublime to the ridiculous.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.